Imagine being just 10 years old, living a quiet life in a small town, and suddenly everything changes. That's what happened to Tiffane Ozier, Brigitte Macron's daughter. One day, she was just a regular schoolgirl, and the next, her family was caught in the middle of a huge scandal. Her mom, Brigitte, was rumored to be in a relationship with one of her teenage students, Emmanuel Macron, who would later become the president of France. For a kid like Tiffane, that was hard to understand at first. She remembers when she started to notice something unusual between her mom and Emmanuel. It wasn't just gossip at school. The rumors spread through the whole town. People talked, judged, and whispered about her family constantly. There was no social media back then, but that didn't make things easier. Everyone knew everything in their small town, and that made it tough for a child to watch her family get picked apart by whispers and suspicion. Despite all this, Tiffane says they held their heads high. She learned to be open-minded and tolerant, even when things were unfair. One of the hardest parts was seeing her dad, André Louis Ozier, quietly leave the family home in 1994 because of all the tension. Even though he didn't officially divorce Brigitte until 2006, those years were filled with struggle. Tiffane talks about how her family slowly changed after that. She remembers her dad as someone who was always there for her, even though he passed away in 2019. Inside their home, things were intense. Emmanuel Macron, as a teenager, often came to visit, ringing the doorbell, which only made gossip worse. Tiffane's siblings, Lawrence and Sebastian, were also students at the same school where Brigitte taught, so the rumors really hit close to home. The scandal didn't just disappear, it stayed with them for years. What's even harder for Tiffane were the wild rumors online, like conspiracy theories saying her mom was born male. That kind of misinformation hurt a lot, but she's learned to rise above the hate. Today, she's a lawyer, living with her husband and 2 children, but the memories from her childhood are still there. Still, she chooses not to live with bitterness. Instead, she speaks calmly about how she's learned to move forward despite everything. Let's rewind to the early 1990s when Emmanuel Macron was just 15 years old. He was a student at La Providence, a Catholic school in the small town of Amiens in northern France. Brigitte, who was 24 years older than him, was his literature and drama teacher. She was married and had 3 kids, living what seemed like a normal life. But everything changed during a school play called The Art of Comedy. Brigitte and Emmanuel spent many Friday nights after rehearsals working together, practicing lines and sharing ideas. That's when their bond grew closer. Emmanuel later said it felt like they had always known each other. Brigitte even called Emmanuel a genius, someone intense and driven far beyond his age. At first, people thought it was just a close teacher-student friendship. But then things started to get more serious. Other students noticed Brigitte and Emmanuel spending a lot of time together, sometimes staying late after school, clearly focused on one another. One day, they were even seen at a restaurant sharing what witnesses called a tender moment. That was enough to set off a storm of gossip in their small town. Emmanuel's parents were shocked when they found out. At first, they thought he was dating Brigitte's daughter, which would have been easier to accept. But when they learned the truth, they took quick action. They sent Emmanuel to a boarding school in Paris to try and break the connection, hoping distance would make him forget. Brigitte also tried to keep her distance, believing Emmanuel would move on. But he didn't. He kept calling and writing letters, promising he would marry her someday. Imagine a teenage boy making that kind of commitment. Brigitte knew her feelings too, but wasn't reckless. She stayed in her marriage for 10 more years, trying to protect her family from the fallout. Finally, after her children were grown, Brigitte and Emmanuel were free to be together. Her husband left in 1994, and their divorce wasn't final until 2006. A year later, Brigitte and Emmanuel married. She was 54, he was 29. They even tied the knot in the same seaside town where Brigitte had married her first husband, almost like closing a circle. Despite the huge age gap and all the controversy, Brigitte and Emmanuel's relationship has lasted for decades. Emmanuel went on to build a successful career, rising fast in politics. In 2017, at just 39 years old, he became the youngest president in French history. During his victory speech, he thanked Brigitte, saying she was always there and that without her, he wouldn't be who he is. By the time Emmanuel won re-election in 2022, the world had mostly accepted their love story, though some people still raised eyebrows. They never had children together, but Emmanuel stepped in as a stepfather to Brigitte's 3 kids and even became a step-grandfather to her 7 grandchildren. It's a family story that doesn't fit the usual mold, but not everyone has accepted it. Online, conspiracy theories and rumors still swirl. Some accuse Brigitte of things that just aren't true, like wild stories about her gender or past. These false stories hurt the family, especially Tiffane, who remembers the bullying and gossip from her childhood. Through it all, Tiffane chooses not to hold on to anger or bitterness. She speaks calmly, showing strength shaped by years of dealing with public judgment. It's clear the experience has left scars, but also taught resilience. So what do you think? Is their story a unique love that defied all odds, or something that still raises questions? Whatever your view, it's a reminder that behind every scandal, there are real people living through it, with feelings and struggles that don't always make the headlines.